and we're going to find out first because I've got some things I want to talk about, and it would be good if I had. So we've got no Kathy today. Then is that right, Richard?
Yeah, I haven't heard from her, but she hasn't turned up. So
She's in the dress.
She's hidden in the dress, exactly. So I'm gonna say that anyone, I just Ruth, don't forget your shekels this week, and that's that done. Right. Okay.
We'll
Right, so
sort
other than what I want Peter to do, not Peter, Richard to do, reynold portray. Have you got any other news this week, Richard?
only if you go on Facebook, you can find the report on the dig down at Llantwit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that. But we already knew because you already told us. Aha.
Yeah,
already
have
knew
you
'cause
seen it on Facebook where they got all the daily reports from there?
That's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
That is cool. That is cool. That is cool. And what that's going to be ending in the next few days, isn't it?
Well, it didn't. They told me that they would be having a like an open day, you know, and show the finds and everything. And they sort of mentioned something like the 9th of, but up to yesterday they were still digging down there. So,
Right, so the 9th is a Saturday,
yeah,
and well, that's if the weather's okay.
possibly they've kept going because of the weather has picked up, and I think it was a bit of a mud bath when they first started down there, reading that.
Yeah, no, it can be very. Well, hang on, I thought it was tented over, Richard. You said somebody told me it was a tent over it.
No, possibly small areas were, but
Oh right, okay,
it
that's
was all open
disappointing.
when we were down there.
Oh, you
Obviously,
went-
the
you
weather
went-
was fine, so
You went with Paula, did you? Oh no, you went with Paul, right?
yeah, that was, well, bank holiday
Hang on.
Monday, so
That was bloody ages ago, Richard.
yeah.
Okay, well, keep us up to date, Richard. Are you going down there with Pauline or Paul?
Probably will, yeah, when that's
Yeah, I'll probably go down with Pauline because you won't get a bloody word in edgeways if you go take Paul. You know, it's like
yeah, because that Tim,
Go
what's
on.
his name? Tim Young said that I say they'd be having this open day there, so and he
okay,
put notice of it online, so
okay, good.
I'll keep an eye out.
Well,
Green dress.
it will be done and dusted this time next week, won't it, Richard? So you'll just have to give us a little update. Oh, and Richard, can you take a little picture so we can put it in the Alyssig pillar as well? Richard?
Yeah. Oh, if I go, yeah. If I get down. I never thought I should have taken one on Monday, and for some reason I didn't.
Actually, Richard, that would have been absolutely brilliant because
know.
that would have been, you know, that's because we don't have much local stuff in the way of excavations. Because
Yeah.
this one, there's like one in Chepstow in the next Alyssig pillar, which you've all had. There's a foot that we've got Chepstow, we've got Caerphilly, and we've got something in North Wales. We've got an excavation in North Wales, but we haven't got anything down here, I don't think. So that just any photograph, even if it's like the backdrop of the area,
Yeah.
that would be really good, Richard. Cool. And hopefully they'll have walkboards and stuff so you can get over there. So that'll be good, Richard. Anyway, exciting stuff, Richard. Keep us posted. Right. Okay. So right. Oh God, I forgot where we bloody are now, Richard. Anyway, Ruth, obviously, have you got anything you'd like to tell us this week?
Not a lot, no. Very busy,
Okay.
but not a lot.
Kate, other than things that I've already mentioned that we're going to discuss, which you can come in on, anything you'd like to mention?
No, not at the moment. Cheers.
Okay, then the next big boy in all of this is Peter, and I want Peter to say something, because I am just finally getting my stuff done now. So, Peter,
What about?
anything? Peter, tell us how wonderful I don't know anything is. Yeah, what is the latest with Flathome anyway? You haven't told us anything about that.
Well, it's still there. I'd say I don't get out there now, sadly. I would love to, but with the way things are, I can't get out there.
Right, okay.
But I say I don't even do the talks on Flathome now anymore.
Right, okay.
Have you got it all written down, Richard?
Peter,
I mean, Peter, sorry. Excuse
Yeah.
me. Peter, have
Yeah,
you
go on.
got your talks written down?
Not really. No. Why?
Oh, you really should, so that we'll have them.
Peter's
It's a
Peter's
historic document, my darling. It's helpful, isn't it? So funny. I asked my brother, he was complaining about his long hours creating energy in California under terrible circumstances. And my first thing I said was, have you got any documentation of your hours? Are you keeping a diary?
actually Peter's in the same box as me, that we do lectures and we just don't write them down. However, what you should be saying to Peter is that could he give a talk sometime, and then we will film it, and that
Yes.
Even better,
Yeah.
even
That-
better. Love that.
because unfortunately Pete's like me. He's very anecdotal, right? So Pete goes with the wave like I do, and you can't. There's incremental things. So if you're giving a talk, that's the best way. I think that's best, isn't it, Pete?
Yes. Okay.
Oh, hurrah! Yay!
Yeah,
Pete
definitely.
on film.
Shut up, you.
Pete
Right, okay
on
then. Right.
film.
Okay, I've got a few announcements. First things first, I don't know where Anne is, but she's got some personal issues at this minute. Her brother died, was it 10 days ago? So that's a shame.
Oh.
She wasn't able to get to the funeral. Basically,
Why?
she organised to go to the funeral in Canada.
Oh.
But even before she had organised to get the tickets, he had already been buried.
It's already over. We made it.
Yeah, they do them like that, don't they?
They do. Right. So the next thing is because Sandra funeral's on the 18th of September, right? And I gotta be honest with you, we've got people in our side who knew her very well because they'd stayed with her and seen her a few times. And obviously me and Peter and it's just that people are saying that they want to send cards and stuff, and it's just like things are getting closer and closer and closer, and it's just like that side of things. Anyway, it's at the Barry Crematorium on the 18th, which is a Monday at 10 o'clock. The biggest problem is for me, because I'm down here, for me to even attempt to get there at 10 o'clock, it's meaning that I've got to get the animals up in the dark. I've got to feed them. I then got to get on the road, try to avoid all the traffic on the M4 motorway. So it's looking like a no-go for me, which is unfortunate. And Peter's saying that he's got an appointment as well. So this is all disappointing stuff with Sandra. But anyway, we can still talk about it next Wednesday, and that's on the 18th. Maybe a reef or something, if somebody could take that there on the 18th, and then an idea for next week. But that's our last chance, really. Anything on that, Pete? Pete?
Not really. No.
Okay. So the Barron District piece last week was Palmerston House. And after I'd written a piece on Palmerston House, people gave me loads of stuff on it. And there was two things with Palmerston House last week. I had the editor get to me and said, "Oh, your spellings are all wrong." And I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Oh, it's Palmerston." And I said, "No, it's Palmerstown House." And she said, "No, it's not." And I said, "It is. If you look at the building, it says Palmerstown." And she said, "Oh, what a bloody fool I am." And actually, people didn't look at the photograph when I put it on the page. It actually says Palmerstown and not Palmerston. Even though it's in Palmerston, the house is called Palmerstown. So then there was a problem with the naming of Palmer Street, and further on down, you've got Palmerston Road. You've got Palmerston School. So anyway, that's that.
My
So-
kids used to go there.
So did my mum.
Tired, Biggie.
But so the other thing as well is we've got Barry past and present online is going very, very well. And we're coming close to 800 people on it. There's been some shenanigans last week with the other page, which is of a similar name, has been saying, oh, you know, you've taken our name and all the rest of it. And they started having a go at me. And people who were actually defending me on there were chucked off and they come onto our page, which is quite ironic. And then somebody else set up another page, which was of the same title, which was slightly different to P-Take. So I thought that was interesting. But the main thing with Barry past and present, it's very positive now, and there's been no shenanigans. And it's what it should be. Everybody's happy on there, and that's what we want. So that's good. So those who ain't on it, then it's Barry past and present, non-left-wing history. And we've got a bit of a debate whether we should change the name. I'll be back at the studio very soon. It's just there's been a lot going on in West Wales, as you know. And finally, Kate, can you tell us a little bit more about this St. Barracks thing, please? And obviously, we can't see your image, so you're going to have to put it with me.
Oh, right. I sent you a message asking if you thought we should change it by an hour. Because you said 2 o'clock. And I'm thinking if we make it 1 o'clock, that's lunchtime and that's sensible.
Well, if the problem is that if we're going to agree on something, right? I'm one of these people, you've got to agree on it. So, okay, 1 o'clock is fine. And what we need now to do is tell people it's going to be 1 o'clock alongside where St. Barracks Chapel is on Barry Island on the 27th, which happens to be a Thursday.
It's a Tuesday.
Shit, what?
I'm pretty sure. Let me check again.
So, excuse my expletives. I always thought it was a Thursday. The 27th.
Oh, God. Oh, God. No, this is funny. It's a Wednesday. I've just checked it. No, you can't.
It's a Wednesday. It's the 27th.
Wednesday, the 27th.
Wednesday at 1 o'clock. And on the grass next door to the chapel, we're going to have a sit down, a little chin wag. Pete come over, Richard come over, Ruth will tell Kathy.
Bring a picnic.
Well, we'll have Paul Ogden. Yeah, fair enough. Tell everybody, Richard, and we'll stick it on Barry past and present. That's a date. That'll go on Barry past and present today.
Yeah.
Well, Barry past and present, non-left-wing history. That is the 27th, and that's a date. Good.
Super.
And Peter can come along and point over there and say, that's Flatome over there.
Yeah.
And he can go off on a complete diatribe then.
Yeah.
Talking about Flatome, and we'll film it. There it. You see what I did there, Kate? Right, now what I want us to do is it's going to be me and Richard now. So we're going to be looking at the name Portray, right? And so we've got to lead into this. I've got to lead into this with an image. And that's what we're going to do. An image. Oh, before we do this, Peter, if Anna happens to turn up, I got to give you and Richard, let's give you, just add her on.
Okay.
Please.
Okay.
Which is, you know what it's like. This is this can be frustrating. Anyway, so cool. Were you in on last night's lecture, Kate?
A little bit. I was so exhausted though. I couldn't keep up.
Okay, fair enough. Right. Okay. There you go. Now this is.
It's alarming though. Did I get the impression that Maze Howe isn't what it should be, or?
Yeah. Mace Howe isn't what it should be. My big problem now is that there's just so much of our history is just made up, and not just in a written sense, but in a physical sense. Because okay, just start with this, right? I used to work for a company called Guide Friday in Cardiff. I used to be a tour guide on a bus. It didn't last long, but anyway, I used to be a tour guide on the bus, and one of the things, we made a big thing of Cardiff Castle. So the bus would start at Cardiff Castle, and we would say we'd talk about Cardiff Castle, and we'd go around, and we would talk about Cardiff Castle again, and we'd go to the docks, right? And obviously, you know, one of the big things about Cardiff Castle is that the wall was completely built directly on the Roman footings, and people go there and think, oh my God, this is a great Roman wall, and they've got to be corrected every time, even on that, even on that, it's almost as if history seems to be altered, even in a physical sense. And I'm going to tell you something that none of you know, right? And I've not mentioned this for years. In 1989, when I was actually pals with Howard Thomas, when we were friends, and one of the things that sort of upset him was that there was a sign on the outside of Barry Castle in a little frame that says, you know, the site was excavated by the Barry and Vale Archaeological Society in the 70s or whatever it was, and Howard Thomas's name was on it. So I took it off the wall, I photographed it, and then I took it back and I put new raw plugs into the wall, right? Anyway, somebody saw me doing this, and they actually thought that I was actually putting a new sign on there. So anyway, the sign come off the wall, and it got discarded, right? So anyway, they printed a new plan. The council printed a new plan, and the plan was by all effects, there were some inaccuracies with it, right? So we've moved on from a little bit of an accurate history to inaccuracies, and even when we went to Barry Castle, some of the I showed you an area that they got the reconstruction wrong. Right, and it's very frustrating that. Right, anyway, moving on. So when the name Reynold Portray came up in a lecture quite some weeks ago.
How do you spell that? I'm sorry.
Well, right, okay, it's Reynold, 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 and portray, right, is not without the H, is Portrey. Portray, yeah. So this came up a few weeks ago, right? And the reason why we've got this image from the Barry book, this again's Howard Thomas image. This is described on page 143 as the old port of Barry showing quayside as it might have appeared in the late 16 and 1700s. Owstree farmhouse on left, Owstree barn at centre, with lime kiln behind, storehouse in right, foreground shoreline curving away to East Barry. Well, I can tell you straight away that is wrong, because the lime kilns weren't built until the mid 1800s. Right, anyway, that aside, forget that detail. I've only just spotted that. Never mind. Right, anyway, I've just spotted that inaccuracy. Oh, God, even in the book. God. Right, so then we went on to say the quayside at Barry was located at the bottom of Ship Hill, below the parish church of St. Nicholas, which we know, Old Harbour. Oh, right, okay. I just spotted, looking at something, which was a good landmark for sailors in the difficult waters of the Severn Estuary. And as you look there, as it curves around, as you look to the centre of the picture, and over on the other side, where you've got the white fields there, that is where East Barry House would have been, which isn't on there, which that would have come later, apparently. So nearby in existence by 1598 was a storehouse, which Evans Mouse described in 1622 as having divers lofts and cellars. In 1622, the storehouse was let to Reynold Portray. Again, in 1622, it was let to Reynold Portray. Just a little bit more information, and then I'm over to Richard. Also tenant of the Owstree for 26 shillings and 8 pence a year, together with the water bailiwick unto the manors of Barry, Penmark, and Fonmon. Obviously, the bailiwick is some kind of customs duty, and the right to levy and retain the customary duties that the St. John's could levy on ships coming into the harbour. So in other words, the bailiwick was in like the customs reeve or the customs bailiff. Now back to Portray. This was Reginald Portray. This is what he was. He was basically a grandiose tax collector. Portray could also claim for his own all casualties from wrecks up to the value of 40 shillings. So if there was a shipwreck and all that was on it was 40 shillings, he would keep the lot. If it was 41 shillings, 1 shilling would go to the St. John's family. And his storehouse was said to have convenient room to lay the same wrecks and casualties by sea until convenient sale thereof by the lord of the said manors or the claims of the bodies. Right? Carry on a bit further, Richard, and I want you on this. Duties levied on ships included 2 pence keelage, 2 bushels out of every cargo of salt, and 4.5 pence on every ton of wine. Foreign ships paid double these rates. So that's that. So foreign ships is in French, Irish, Spanish, not English, because Wales was England then, because the Act of Union was 1536, and that's never been repealed. So technically, when people lecture me about Wales, we are still Welsh. We're in Wales at this minute. But that's me being pedantic. I'm just trying to wind you all up. Right, so Richard, go for it.
Right here. Well, all I can, there's not a lot on him. He was born in Llantwit. 6.
In what year?
1566.
So let's stop there. So this is 1566. So Reynold Portray. So that's 34 and 22. That's he was 56 years old. Carry on.
And he
When he
died in 1629. And he actually died in Bonmont Castle. Apparently, he was living there at the time.
Weird.
So,
Anything else?
And he was buried then. He's actually buried in Portray Church, where there's quite a large gravestone set into the wall of Portray Church. I think I did email that to you. Well, I don't know if you can bring that up.
Right.
Oh,
Okay.
that's great.
Right, Richard. Right, you emailed it to me, so I'm just looking at my. Right, carry on, Richard. I'm just trying to feed into this.
Yeah. So his wife is Anne Nichol.
Of
Sorry,
the Nichol.
Joan Nichol.
Joan Nichol.
So
Yeah.
I think she's one of the Nichols are quite a notable family in the Vale in that sort of time. She was born in Llantwit in 1580 and died in 1651. So she outlived him by quite a few years. And then their daughter was Anne Portray, and she married Major William Giles, who was one of the Giles family from Gileston Manor. He was the last of the Giles, actually, the last male heir of the Giles family that she married. But I think the actual, if you can find that picture of the slab, it's got quite a few details on that.
Well, I've actually got it on here, right? So I'm just thinking, did you get this off the internet, Richard?
Yeah, it's not very clear.
It's not very clear.
I did have a better one of it, but it disappeared.
So I've actually got the reference in. I've actually got it on my on my phone, right?
Yeah.
But I can't get it over to here. So if I type in Reynold Portray, the spelling on here, spelling on what I've got is slightly different.
I've got it. I don't see that very well, can you?
We can't see anything, Richard, because we're on screen share.
Yeah.
Oh, hang on a minute. Are you able to get yours on screen share? Oh, hang on, Richard. I've got a good one. It's there Oh, it's there.
Yeah.
Ooh,
I think I sent it to you before.
It is in front of me. So hang on. Oh, hang on. How are we going to do this? Hang on a minute. Right,
That's
so-
it there. It's not-
ooh. Wow.
Hang on.
What is that?
Hang on, folks. If you let me use my technology a minute. So if you can see there, right? So what I'm going to do, I don't know if it's bigger on your screen, but I'm going to read out from my device, right? Because my eyes are going to go otherwise. I'm going to read out from my device. So that's that. It says as follows: Here lieth the body of Reynold Portray with an E on the end. And portray is actually spelt Portreyes. Lies deceased 24th day of February 1629. Died 63 years. Left time, I can't read that. He left a living. Yeah, it gets very difficult to read, but you basically get the gist. Oh, hang on, is this clear what on here? Hang on. Oh yeah, it's really clear. Hang on, Matt. I'm struggling to try and work out the technology. Hang on, if I do this, right? What I'm going to do, hopefully, technology will work. If I go there, right, and oh yes, do you know what? I'm good, I'm really good. You know, don't just tell everybody I'm brilliant. It's just I am great. Right, so here we go. It goes lieth 63 years, who in this lifetime cured many of something of the body infirmities. I can't work out what that means. He left living of Joan, is that right? His loving wife, Wieffe, who's caused this monument of her, well, it's getting really bad, husband, desires to be here. You're gonna, but that's as good as we're gonna get. But that is actually quite a good inscription. So
Her name
it
was
goes-
Anne.
right, caused living. He left living. Is it you saying that's Anne?
No, I thought Richard told us her name was Anne. Anne
His
Nichols.
his wife was Joan.
Oh, Joan, who is? Oh, and the daughter's Anne
The
only, is it?
daughter is Anne, yeah.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
I thought they
So
were both Anne. That's so annoying when they do that. When they name the
that-
same.
That's Joan, right?
Aren't you?
Anyway, that's a really nice thing, to be honest with you, because we are actually looking at gravestones in a moment from Llantwit Major. Well, that was well worth waiting for, Richard. Thank you for that.
It
So
is
anyway,
good.
that's obviously indoors,
Mm.
and that they're probably using graphenstone.
Obviously it's on the side, isn't
They're
it?
probably using graphenstone lime-based paint, which I'm actually using in the house here around the outside. That's actually quite a good. I'm loving the way they've done that. Put that into restoration. That's really respectful, and that is a really nice monument there. And again, we're loving that. We really are. Anyway, thank you for that, Richard. Thank you. So the next thing that we're going to do today is that we're going to go off there, and we're going to go to there. And as you can see, gravestones. So what I wanted to do is actually, this is trying to sort of cross some of the T's really and dot some of the I's. And the reason, you know, we mentioned the Llantwit Major a lot, and we mentioned saints. And whether lots of what I'm going to read is anything that I believe, sometimes it's good to get another take on things, and that's what we're going to do. Llantwit Major Church. Now, none of you have been on my walk looking at Llantwit Major Church, but it's very, very different in the way I explain it than most other historians. And the way I explain Llantwit Major Church is that is not the original church in Llantwit Major. And the key aspect that I use is that if you look at the church at Llantwit Major, all the non-dressed stone look like it's come from one quarry. An old church would have undoubtedly used stone from various quarries, because that was the way. But that is not the lecture today. That's my point of view. So these notes are from a Mr. Corbett in the Transactions of the Cardiff Naturalist Society, dating 1906. So this our friend Corbett here, and the Naturalist Society has got close links with the National Museum of Wales when the National Museum of Wales became the National Museum of Wales, because 1906 was before it was built. So here we go. It occurred to me, this is Mr. Corbett, when it was proposed a few months since to carry out some excavations at Llantwit Major. And guess where there's another link? There's excavations in Llantwit Major now. That it might be well to put together a few notes as to the history of the place, not attempting to deal with it fully, but confining myself to such facts as might bear upon the question of what remains might be expected to be found there. So, you know, this is a really good link, because it's like, well, you know, he's talking about what will be published in 1907, and Richard's talking about what will be published and shown in the next few weeks. There are traditions that the Emperor Theodosius established a college there. Now, the Emperor Theodosius of the Western Roman Empire died in the year 395. And it is also stated in the genealogy of Iestyn ap Gwrgan in the manuscripts of Iolo Morgannwg, written in Cowbridge of around 1800, that Erigane, daughter of Caraticus, founded a choir near Llantwit Major. Erigane is discussed in Romans in the Vale of Glamorgan by myself. I suppose that Caer Vorgan, where remains of a Roman house have been found. Where is this Caer Vorgan, which is W-O-R-G-O-R-N? That is, in fact, as we go through these images, make it easy for myself, that is, in fact, this building, which is at Llanmaes, which is 1 mile north of Llantwit Major. That is the Roman villa, excavated by John Story in 1886, which is in Romans in South Wales. Are you noticing I'm quoting from a couple of my own books? I do not think we need attach much importance to these traditions. This is something that I've said as well, so far as they relate to a school or college, but they are interesting from the circumstance that they exist at a time when, apart from such legends, no one knew that any remains of Roman date existed at or near Llantwit Major. But now Roman remains do exist near Llantwit Major, and certainly Roman remains exist in the heart of Llantwit Major itself. It is a curious instance of the way in which tradition is carried on, and how tales of this kind get altered, though founded on fact. It seems very improbable that a school was founded at or near Llantwit Major by or in the time of either the emperors named Theodosius, because there was more than one emperor named Theodosius. I need not here enter into the reasons for this view, but will merely suggest that from a desire to ascribe great antiquity to the later school of Ilktid, it may well have happened that legends spring up which connected it with the Roman remains in the neighbourhood. And may I say, as myself, Karl-James Llantwit, that with work that was undertaken in the 1930s, Roman evidence was found in Llantwit Major, in the heart of Llantwit Major. Vis-a-vis that evidence, and with the evidence of the Roman villa north of Llantwit Major at Caer Mead, or in other, the book says Caer Vorgon, that evidence tells us that people at that time in the late 300s could only be Christian. So because that was the rule of the Roman world, you could not have any other religion than Christianity in the later Roman occupation and influences in Britain in the late 300s and the early 400s. So by the fact that we've got evidence of people living in Llantwit Major in the late 300s and at Caer Mead, they were Christian. End of story. So that means that something of what we've intimated may have a nugget, if it's only one nugget of a pack of 10, truth in it. I would like to, at this juncture, make the statement: where there's myths and legends, there's a fact waiting to be told. Whether all the talk of myths and legends are fact or fiction, there's something in everything. Like somebody being accused of a murder, there's something in it. So for anything of Roman date, we should probably have to search at Caer Vorgon. Now, this book was written in 1906, so it's based on the land mice evidence and not the stuff that was found in the 1930s by the eminent archaeologist. Oh God, it's gone. R.E.M. No, that's not R.E.M. Wheeler. That's the name's there. It's gone. I will come up with it in a short while. But the 1930s excavations add more to what we're saying from 1906. So you go, for anything of Roman date, we should probably have to search at Caer Vorgon rather than at Llantwit Major itself. For I do not know that anything of the Roman times has ever been found at the latter place. We now know it has. And that's one thing, maybe, and this is going to be an interesting point, Richard, you need to look out for Roman evidence that the university is looking for at Llantwit Major. That's what I'm particularly interested in, and early medieval evidence that they're actually trying to look for, which actually links to the early medieval evidence that we're sort of intimating from this juncture, which is predates this building.
What are you looking at?
In this, I may be in error, but I have not heard of anything of the kind. Of course, the discovery the discovery of any such remains would be a matter of great interest, but it is, I suppose, not a thing to be expected. So far as Caer Vorgon is concerned, the partial exploration which took place now nearly 20 years ago by John Story indicated that the Roman house was destroyed with massacre of those who had taken shelter there in some very early raid. We have found out in more recent times, this is me now, that the people who took shelter in that building were actually the people who actually carried out the raid. Those were the people who were executed. The raiders were executed because their DNA linked them to people up north, not local people. Told you this would be interesting. It's sort of discussing the events at Caer Mead, the people who end up with the events at Caer Mead, of pirates from the sea in the early part of the 400s, and that the place was never again occupied from that day to this. Well, we know there's evidence that it was, but again, that's going outside the book. Let's get back to the book. This last fact was abundantly clear. And if there is any truth in the story that the monastery or college of Ilktid was a restoration of any earlier institution, it is pretty certain that it was at least at a different place. Taking that person's views, some of that, there's a lot in what this person is saying And there's a lot in how your mind can expand. Sometimes when I'm actually presenting my lectures on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, I at this stage, I'm usually exploding and saying, you know, that's not true, that's true, this is wrong, that's, you know, give me some ideas. But I'm not doing this in this instance. What I'm trying to do is I'm going a little bit off on the sidelines and getting back to the text quickly, because it leads on to the other information that leads on to these things, which are actually carvings. And these are actually from a book published in 1860 odd, I think. This is from the book, The Early Inscribed and Sculpture Stones of Wales by John Obadiah Westwood. So here we go. Leaving the legends of a college or school of Roman times, we come next to the college and monastery called St. Illtyd's, whose name strongly suggests the Welsh Althtud or Althtud, Acht, Alltud. Alft means base
I
of,
wasn't in school
but
then.
if it's a name, it's Alltud, which is the Welsh for Illtyd, which might actually indicate another meaning, that Altud means a foreigner. But anyway, that's something else. That's talking about the word Illtyd or Alftyd. Carry on with the text. May it not, in fact, be derived from that word. I do not want to dwell at length upon what has been said of him by various authorities, but will only say that to fix his exact date seems to me difficult, if not impossible, as his story is mixed up with legends about Germanus, Dubricus, and Samson. Now, not Samson as Peter, it is Samson of Dol, Samson. And I would like to say that the word Illtyd might actually mean the place, not the person. Putting that in there from this, that's all. Carrying on. Again, I like people thinking outside the box. It has been said that he and Dubricus were contemporary. Illtyd, or however you want to look at it, and Dubricus were contemporary. That the latter was consecrated by Germanus on the occasion of his visit to Britain, and that Samson, educated Illtyd, was himself consecrated by Dubricus. Now Germanus was over here in the late 440s. Odd. Now, I believe one of the few things considered to be established as to Samson, I mean the Bishop of Gaul of that name, to whom the narratives of his life are written down, and he attended the council as a bishop of the Christians in 557. So that means that Gaul's in the 500s. Further, it appears to be a matter of authentic history based upon the authority of Prosper, a contemporary writer, that the first visit of Germanus to Britain took place, not as I said in the 440s, but in 429, or within a year or so of that date. Now, the problem is with all of this is that the time span of these people is quite mixed. And what we've got these beautiful inscribed stones that we're really not going to go into detail looking at these. We're going to actually look at another stone, which is going to be this one, which is that one there, that one, which has actually got carvings which are very similar to the Urbic cross at Languedoc. So with this in the background, it is therefore evident that the accounts which connect Germanus and Samson and Dubricus in the way I have mentioned, and Dubricus, Samson with Illtyd, cannot be correct. So in other words, there's lots of discussion of these people and when they actually existed, and in one or two cases if they existed. Now, as you know, I'm a born skeptic of this type of stuff, but I've got to lay myself down to be chastised, in that there's got to be some evidence and existence in some of these individuals. They can't all be made up. But we haven't got all the dates together. So what is basic, what we're trying to say and agreeing with this author for once that and not for once, because he's saying a lot of sense, but you know, I like to go off the line. Sometimes what you do, what happens in history is that it's like it's like having 5 sets of jigsaws, right? Chucking all the pieces together in the air, taking 1/5 of all those jigsaws mixed up, putting that together to make one jigsaw. All the evidence for the jigsaw is correct, but it's from 5 different jigsaws, right? And this is exactly the point that I made with the Urbit cross at Languedoc, where it was reconstructed from different monuments. And that's to be remembered, not forgotten. So, carrying on. What we got is various lives of these people. And we've got the annals of Cambrai record the death of Dubricus as having taken place in 612, more than 180 years after the visit of Germanus, if he came over here in 429, and 55 years after Samson attended the council of the Christians, council of bishops, in 557. So what somebody's done, they've sat down and they've put everything into one book, which is quite disconcerting, right? And then that links us to Barak. Personally, if you ask me if Barak, if the person head of Barak existed, I would say no, right? But I would like to say that there must have been some early Christian activity associated with Peter's Flatholm, our Barry Island, and other localities for it to be a very deep Christianized area. So that cannot be disputed. But one thing that cannot be disputed either is that when the Normans come into the area from the 1090s onwards, they're milking and bastardizing early Christianity for their own financial devices. Why do you think we've got all these monks screwing the landscape for the land and making a lot of money out of people? I don't like Norman Christianity either. I like early Christianity, so I'm biased. I'm sorry. It must be admitted, however, that that some authorities place Dubricus much earlier, that the documents were actually wrong in 522 or thereabouts. But this author, but I have not observed that anything in the nature of evidence is put forward for this earlier date. Now, one quite unobvious thing is lots of the stones from these stones, all these beautiful carved stones with really nice lettering on it. Lots of these stones more than likely date not from the 400s. Well, not more than likely. They don't date from the 400s. They date from the 500s and the 600s, right? So lots of these names are actually carved into them, right? Like Samson, for example. And there's other curious names which also link with Christchurch, which I mentioned the other week. Back to this really nice sort of, I prefer this because it's easier to understand because there's no writing on it. I don't mean that from a sort of Mogadon, but it sort of makes sense from the language of the scroll work there. And yes, Peter, before you say it, there's an example of Celtic knotwork there. But can you see that at the bottom there? Does that again remind us of some of the work that we found at the Urbit cross? Bingo. Bingo. Maybe you should take a screenshot of that if you ever do go out, so you've actually got it in front of you, right, as it's on the screen now. So anyway, carrying on, that what we do find is that it talks about the whole history of this area. So going back to this, and to adopt, you know, the earlier chronologies of the people is to allege to have been contemporary, and also, as it seems to me, the author, it is difficult to reconcile with the account which Gildas gives of the state of the church in his day, though I would not lay too much stress upon this latter argument, for the writings of Gildas are very violent and raise a suspicion that his comprehensive abuse may not have been altogether justified. So in other words, how much, so if we look at the work of Gildas, right, and I can't say the distressing text that Anne's just sent me, but yeah, there's something about the death of a brother that I can't say online. I'll have to say offline. Right, Gildas. Gildas's life. Let's give you a little bit of information about Gildas. Gildas was born around AD 500 and he died roughly in 570 in France. And Gildas is the person who's writing the history in his lifetime. So, you know, Gildas. So in other words, I think one thing that we should do when we're looking at this history is not be obsessed with minutiae. We could say that if Gildas is writing about some of these people, we've got to say that these people actually existed, right? Tubercus, for example, existed, right? Because Gildas is writing about him. But Gildas isn't all necessarily writing from first-hand accounts. Lots of these monks are writing hundreds of miles away from where these events are actually taking place. Very unlikely that Gildas would have ever visited Llantwit Major if he knew it existed in the first place. I would not lay too much stress upon the writings of Gildas. As to Samson, Bishop of Dol, though I do not feel competent to express any opinion as to the truth or otherwise of the legend which asserts his connection with Llantwit, but a stone associated with him, one of the carvings that we've got today, is associated with Samson of Dol, which I'm going to, hang on, trying to work out what, Samson. So, yeah, there it is. Hang on a minute. I just got to double check the fact a minute. Hang on a minute. If you could bear with me, I've got to get the stone right. I always get this wrong. Oh, Dol, Llantwit Major. Just trying to get the right stone. The source I'm using is a bit all over the place. Bear with me a second. Images. Right, it's yeah, it's that one. Color. That one. That's the Samson of Dolstone. That mentions Samson. That by the way is actually in the gallery. That's the Samson of Dolstone, and this image is actually when it was actually not the image, but when this was sketched, this was actually in the graveyard at Llantwit Major in the mid 1800s, and then it was placed inside the church, and then it was placed in the gallery that we know about in Llantwit Major, where there's a little museum where all these stones are actually in. So this is a stone associated with Samson, Bishop of Dol, and he's mentioned on this stone. So does that mean that what this author's writer's saying is that he's mentioned on a stone, but what is the exact link with Llantwit Major? That's what he's saying. And then there's a connection any more than I feel able to fix the exact date of Ilkdid. It does appear to the author that he has almost certainly been in some histories mixed up with Abbot Samson of much later date. So the Samson of the Cross, known by his name, to which I propose shortly to refer. As regards to Ilkdid, if we cannot say at what precise period he lived, there is no reason to doubt that he was the founder of a monastery and church at Llantwit in the early period when it was the custom to name Welsh churches after their founders and not after what we term patron saints. Now, that's really good stuff in what we're just saying, but what the really good stuff in what we're saying is that the story of Llantwit Major is very, very mixed up. And it's going to be very, very difficult now because the written history is mixed up to try and work out fact from fact and where the jigsaw pieces fit, which is unfortunate. But we can say that these carved stones have got a really nice set of antiquity associated with them, with the 500s, 600s and beyond. Now, going back to the earlier image and thinking about this, obviously this is later, it's from about the 1100s. The monastery became the landscape of Llantwit Major. And then on maps it says Old School and Bishop's Palace, where they are excavating now. The monastery became a celebrated college. Of the actual monastery or college of Llantwit, it is not likely that any remains would be found. At the utmost, there could be only foundations difficult to identify, and even such are not likely, as the earliest buildings would probably be of timber. Who's just come online? Somebody's just come online. Hello. I'm gonna see what's got. Somebody's just come online.
Yeah, Sam.
Oh, she's just joined us.
Yeah.
And whatever you do, do not mention what you said in that text, because my contract with YouTube will be terminated. Don't mention it. So we're talking about Llantwit, Anne, and sorry that you're having such a hard time at this minute. Our love goes out to you, Anne. We're talking about Llantwit, and we're talking about the foundation of Llantwit based on a document from 1906. At the utmost, there could only be foundations difficult to identify, which we haven't found of the early college or monastery or religious place at Llantwit Major, and even such are not likely, as the earliest buildings would probably be of timber. And that, my folks, leads us directly on to St. Cadoc's Church, Cadoxton, because I was involved with the archaeological excavations with Howard Thomas there in 1989, and Gary Tiley and Brian Luxton and the Pope. And one of the things that Howard Thomas was looking for, he went down a depth of about a meter and a half at least, to find the original timber church of St. Cadoc. He didn't find it. It was a dream of his. Only to be told that the church may have actually been under where the pub is, or the pub was, which has been converted into a house now, which is next door to the church. There is the authority of Bede, the Venerable Bede, and other evidence to show that British churches were mostly of timber. As to the existence of the monastery at a very earlier date, the entries in the Liber Landavesis, which is the life of Llandaff, afford evidence which is worthy of being regarded. So what we're going to do, folks, we're going to read this, right? And I'm just going to read, right? Because if I interrupt this, we're going to interrupt the flow. Nobody interrupt. We're just going to keep going. So what we're going to do, we're going to have one of these really beautiful stones as a bit of a backdrop there. It's all the scroll work there. So I have, and the writer says as follows in 1906, I have given a good deal of time to the consideration of these documents, and I have read what has been said of them by various writers of authority and learning, and have come to the conclusion that although they must be read with caution, and though we can by no means accept them as anything like wholly genuine, yet they are in some respects very valuable and entitled to more weight than some persons whose opinion is entitled to respect them have attributed to them. So in other words, take note. No one ever sat down to invent all these documents. That is a good point as well. I'm gonna break my little rule a minute. This is the point. 2 points I make about old documents, like Bede, like Nennius, like Gildas, like the books of Llandaff, like the books of Heragest, all these, Mabinogion, everything, right? You can't dismiss everything in these books, and you cannot dismiss the work of Iolo Morgannwg, who dies in 1826, who's got his own little museum and bookshop and sort of, he's an antiquarian, you know, and all the rest of it. In the heart of Cowbridge, everyone dismisses his work, but he mentioned of the Llantwit Major Villa in the late 1700s, and it led John Story to find the Roman villa at Llantwit. But for decades, people dismissed his work, and there was never a villa at Llantwit Major, but it was found. So be very wary of dismissing documents entirely. No one ever sat down to invent all these documents. It's like the Bible as well. I'm a big believer, right, in the Old Testament. A huge believer in the Old Testament. I'm not a Christian, but well, all the places that you look for involving the Old Testament, they found, right? And except Sodom and Gomorrah, but I think they're on to that one. But so again, looking at documents, you can dismiss them, but myths and legends are in fact waiting to be told. So, in the sense that reduce to writing what may have previously been mere tradition, so there's something in them. Further, the grants themselves evidently do not appear in all cases in their right order, and several of them cannot have been made by the kings by whom, and to the bishops to whom they profess to have been made. Grants documents about land. For instance, Bishop Odecius, Oudocceus, which is a name you want to come across, is made contemporary with Moric, son of Tuderic. And also we've got another interesting name, Athruis, son of Moric. You've got loads of different names here, which are associated with the carvings there, right? And you've got these names like which are mentioned in these stones and documents, right? And people say, you know, these names, are they real or not, and so on. But these names come from somewhere. So looking at all these complicated names, this is evidently impossible to dismiss or to make fact. And there are other matters of the same kind which show that the earlier grants in particular cannot be relied upon as anything like accurate. Me interjecting, but there might be some accuracy involving in them anyway. We are in fact probably owe their existence in their present form to the early 1100 centuries dispute between Bishop Urban and the bishops of St. David's and Hereford as to the bounds of their respected dioceses, and some of them were probably invented or altered so as to suppose the Llandaff view, though not necessarily by the compiler himself. So what they're saying is that later on, all the earlier documents may have been truthful, but then the later documents that come in 1200s to try and prove a point may have been doctored. So we've got to go to the early inscriptions, the early documents that actually have more proof than the later documents invented by the Normans, right? Or partly doctored by the Normans. This is what I'm saying. The Normans, they come into the area, they use Christianity for their own devices to create great dioceses so they can make they can rate the landscape with great wealth. And the other point I've been making, and we're not far off to finishing today. The other point I've been making is that you've got to take everything on board and then have an opinion. So there we go, back to these documents. However, with all drawbacks, these records describe real lands and churches. That's the point. As much as we can disagree with the biases and so on, they actually mention real places, real lands, and that is what we're looking for. I tell you what, if the Normans can make up as much history as they want, but if they describe a location and it's still there, that all they've done is distorted the ownership and maybe the legends rather than the fact waiting to be told. There we go. So lots of these records are very valuable for many purposes if used with due caution. That's what we just said. I may perhaps venture to say that at present, it seems to me that the compiler possessed somewhat better information as to the early princes of Gwent and Morgannwg than as to the bishops. It is possible to compile from entries in the life of Llandaff a list of princes of those districts. I do not say quite complete or accurate, but for the most part consistent with other authorities and to itself not contradictory. One thing I was saying on Monday, in my Monday class, which there's Ruth and Kate take part in, and there's Roger and Ellen takes part in it on a Monday. One of the things I've been saying is that the history of Cymru, Wales, has been based on written history, because the coin evidence is lacking, whereas over the border they come across coins of leaders, right, that we've got no documentation on. Carrying on. This cannot be said of the bishops, for in whatever order we may consider they ought to be placed, it cannot be true that all the grants were made both to the bishops who are said to have received them, and also in the time of the princes to whom they were attributed. This matter requires further investigation, and this is not the place to follow out the arguments which bear upon it. And at that moment, I think we should really call it a day. I just wanted to give you some sort of urgent background. If I would like to give you any information about these stones, which we should come to again, this stone is known as the cylindrical pillar, and this pillar is unique of its kind in Wales. It used to stand in the church graveyard at Llantwit Major, now it's pride of place. It used to lean up against the north wall of the church. It is nearly 2 meters high and 14 inches in diameter in the middle, tapering slightly from the bottom to the top, which is injured. The side next to the wall has a small groove extending throughout its whole length, with which some strange notions were attached in former days. It is divided into 4 portions by transverse bars, each composed of 3 narrow ribbons. The bottom compartment is ornamented with straight lines forming a series of zigzags, which we can clearly see. And the other 3 compartments are filled with interlaced ribbon patterns, which are represented in full detail in the detached figure of the plate. We're loving it. So in other words, that's basically stretched out. There it is. This stone itself is a truly, as it's described here, is a truly elegant relic, which in its complete state was most probably surmounted by a cross, which may have been very smaller than something like this. On that note today, that's me done. And, you know, if there's anything you want to say to Anne, please do, but you do not talk about Anne's personal situation with her brother. Right. And it's great to have you on board, Anne, and to have you with us today. And stop that now. And we're going to come on. And I think maybe what we should do, Anne, have you got any questions on anything that you have seen in this bit today?
Well, I will watch this, hopefully the recording again, because I did notice the dig that was taking place at Llantwit Major was on line, which is quite encouraging, really, you know, to see that people are interested.
Yes.
In just trying to find out a little bit more about the our buildings. So I'm sorry I missed this, but I look forward to seeing it again.
You will. I will get a link over to you online, and actually, what I will do, as I'm able to, I will share this over to you via. I will share this over to you now, and this will be on your phone. So, if you've got nothing else, Anne, what we're going to do, we're going to go to Richard.
All right, so I've just looked at a few bits now going on with this dig. So apparently it finishes on the 15th of September. So it's a bit longer to go.
They've extended it by the sounds of it, yeah.
Yeah.
what's on till the 15th of December?
This dig in Llantwit.
Oh, right. I thought it was September.
Yeah, it is 15th.
Oh, sorry.
It's finished
Don't worry,
Yeah,
I'm getting it as well.
Yeah,
this month, so,
it's,
and they found some, quite a lot of pottery and quite a few walls and also
bones.
they've actually
Human
found
bones.
Roman pottery.
Ooh,
Wow.
well, it would be because there's clay on the beach. I know Llantwit inside out.
Yeah, they
Yeah, go
found
on.
Roman pottery, some a nice jug, part of the jug, ham green pottery,
From Bristol.
Bristol. So there's quite a bit. They're
Good.
picking up there, you know.
Good. Well, what I said and what I want is that the next Illicit pillar, because you've had this month's Illicit pillar, the next one will be sent out a lot quicker this time because Rona's now sending them out. So in this next edition, we've got a find in Chepstow, this prehistoric stone that's been illegally dug up in Caerphilly. News about
Excellent.
Sandra, the death of Alan Wilson, the Arthurian guy, and also we've got an excavation that we're referring to at Beaumaris on Anglesey. So it'd be very interesting to get a live image of this excavation at Llantwit Major, and yeah, maybe a couple of images of the artifacts if anyone's able to do that. Right, okay, thank you for that, Richard. Anything else?
No, just, you know, looking at the pictures from there, some good aerial shots on there, so you can pick out quite a few walls and there, so on this GeoArch blog.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, it's called
Yeah,
Cardiff
through the
University.
Glamorgan History Group. I found it through on Facebook.
Yeah, good.
So if
Well, we'll have a bit.
looking at it. I say that looks like they're doing a daily account. So because
Right,
this
so-
one here, it's up to yesterday. So
it finishes on the 14th, so that's a Thursday.
on it.
Oh,
15th.
Friday the 15th.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right, okay, good.
Yeah, I didn't
Okay.
know. Apparently, it's called the Globe Field where it's taking place, and it used to belong to the Globe Pub or Globe Inn.
Oh, yes, the
Llantwit.
Globe pub. Yeah, Globe Inn, yeah.
Llantwit, yeah, which used to have 20 pubs at one stage.
Yeah.
Peter went in all of them on a pub crawl with his sailor mates. It took him a whole day. And
They
he
have got
took
some of it covered over, Carl, but they've only got like gazebos.
I think it'd be
Right.
interesting for Carl to have a look because it's quite, it is professionally done, and
Yeah.
I think you'll understand what's happening.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I know that area very well.
Mm.
So anyway, thanks for that, Richard and Anne. Thank you very much. And Peter, don't talk about your Russian sailors going on a pub crawl at Llantwit Major. We've heard it all before. Right. Peter, anything you'd like to say?
No, it's all fine, thanks.
Right. For Anne, on the 27th of Anne, we've decided that I don't know if you're on our Barry Past and Present non-left-wing history page, but we will be announcing today that on the 27th, Wednesday at 1 o'clock, we will be on Barry Island, the St. Barrack's Chapel, for a little sit down, a little talk to celebrate the life and times of St. Barrack.
Okay, that sounds good to me.
Bring your picnic. It doesn't
Yeah.
count as a feast if we don't eat something, does it?
No.
Well, yeah. Well,
Wow.
it don't. I might bring a pack of ginger biscuits.
That'll do. That'll do. I mean, after all, the Eucharist is only tiny.
Yeah,
Oh,
I'm
do you know what?
sorry.
Hey, Why do we get little bits of bread so we can have the blood of Christ? That would be great.
That'd be lovely.
I like the idea of breaking bread. We don't necessarily have to have a communion,
No.
a Eucharist communion, but I like
No.
the idea of breaking bread.
Yeah.
Actually, what we want is, I would have said John's Hot Bread Shop, but that went 20 years ago. So, what would be good is a freshly baked loaf of bread, right? I'll have some disposable rubber gloves, the same ones that I've used to go up the my sheep's backsides to pull them out.
Oh,
And I will break off bits of bread. Right, okay, Ruth and Kate, anything you want to say?
I do. What it is, I
Go on.
was in St Hilt's school,
In Llantwit, yeah.
yeah, and I can remember back, there was a wall in there. I used to sit against it. And it was an old wall.
Oh,
It's actually in the school. It was the back playground, and I never got on with anyone, so I used to sit against this wall, and it was just a bit of wall,
yeah,
old wall. You know
Oh,
what I
right.
mean?
yeah.
Yes.
But if you think about Llantwit, I mean, the pottery would come from the beach, because me and my brother used to make pots on the beach because there's clay there.
Oh.
Yes.
There's clay there. And
So
if you
where's the
look
Llantwit? Where's the St Hilda's school then?
It's changed about two or three locations since Ruth was there.
Oh, right. Where were you when you were
Where were
there?
you?
Where was
you know
it?
where the Bethel Church is? You know where
In the middle of
Bethel,
town.
in the middle of town, the Bethel Baptist.
Yeah.
It's just there, isn't it? Just up the road.
Yeah, just up the road. It's
Yeah.
now called C41 or something, isn't it? Or
I haven't got a clue. But
Yeah.
you know, you used to go up the drive, and my classroom was right at the back, and it's right at the back there.
We got you. A
Oh.
nice bit of wall, which and actually, interesting you say that, because there's a little folk story that I occasionally tell on my ghost walks in Llantwit Major. I used to that Llantwit Major may have been walled at one stage.
Yeah, could well be,
Yeah.
because if you look out towards the camp, you've
Yeah.
got old buildings there. There's an old farmhouse. There's
Yes.
I mean, the Fisher's Bridge in, that was ancient. Even the bridge going over going to Llantwit from there was old, you know. And I used to go Newton down in the river, like by the camp. There was an old little bridge going over the river. There was so much there, you know, thinking about it.
I hope you don't go down there catching great crested newts now, because they're a protected species.
I know, we did years ago.
Love
I
it,
love
love it,
Llantwit Major,
love
the
it.
town, the old town is lovely.
love it, love it. And there's a bookshop that sells my books there as well.
Yeah.
Right, okay then. And
I don't
finally,
get on with him. He's horrible, that man.
John.
Nickleby.
Oh,
Oh, right. No, he hasn't. Not John. Nickleby. I've been in there for years. I don't think.
I tell you what, my mum never got on with him.
Well, he's not there now. It's basically John
Yeah.
or it's John, or who's a nice guy, and there's John or Caitlin.
Yeah.
Go in there. We'll give you a cup of tea if you say you know me. Right. Okay. Then anything else, Ruth? Kate, do you want to say anything else before we finish?
I just wanted to ask you, what is the name of that stone we were examining?
It's the cylindrical shaft pillar. It's the cylindrical pillar.
oh, is it in the church?
It's in the Stones Museum alongside the
Oh,
church
right.
of Llantwit
Oh,
Major.
good, good,
Yeah.
Oh, you're absolutely right. No, but what really resonated with me when you said people didn't just make up these names and put them on there. Of course they never. Of course they never. They recorded what they believed was right. Of course.
They discovered
It's only
they
when
wrote
people
down what they
fake
wanted
later
to.
on.
Exactly. Exactly. but the thing is, there is some information in it which is useful. It's a bit like a diary, right? I write a daily diary. I've written a daily diary since I've been about, I don't know, 11, right? You know, I some days I miss the fact that, you know, it was a hot day or a wet day. Sometimes I put, it was a hot day today. I might put, I did this work and that work. I don't say every time I bloody fed the sheep. I don't write in there every
Yeah.
time I banged a thing in a piece of wood. I don't write down every time I spoke to someone on the bloody phone, because I can't, right?
No.
And the fact of the matter is, this is what they were like in the past. And in many ways, they probably did more things in a day than we do today. It's just, that's the way it is. Right. So
And often if there's a hiatus in a diary, that just indicates they were too busy to write. Not that, not that they weren't doing anything.
oh my
Too
God,
busy
you are
to
so
record.
right. You are so right. I've got busy days in my life that my diary is basically empty. Oh, I was in an excavation, and that's all that's in there.
Yeah.
And that's I should be writing about the excavation, not the bloody thing. Anyway,
Right,
anybody
I'm
else
gonna
got
leave
anything
you.
else to?
I gotta
What?
go. I've gotta go.
Okay.
Bye,
Anyway, bye bye, Richard.
Richard.
I'll see you tonight,
Hope you
Richard.
do well. Hope you're
Bye.
well.
Cheers
See you
all.
tonight, Richard. Right, see you tonight,
Bye.
Richard. Right. Oh God, that was
Hope
gone.
you stay well, Peter.
Okay, then, what I'm going to do, Peter, right, okay, if nobody else has got anything else to say, Anne, Ruth, and Kate, I'm going to call it a day myself.
Okay, then go and have a nice
Bye then.
cold drink. Or a
I'm
cup
going
of
to have a
tea.
cup of tea
But
and a
not
donut.
tea.
Yeah.
But not
Is
tea.
coffee okay?
No,
All
it's,
right, now and
no,
then,
no,
but not too much.
no. Do you know what? She said, there was a woman in urology. There was two, basically, I actually sat on the floor in the middle of them, and it was like one over on the right, one on the left, right? And we had a nice conversation about half an hour on a Saturday, right? Because they're catching up. And she said, how many cups of tea do you drink? And I said, I drink about 10 a day. She said, right, you've got to take it down to 0.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
God, I'm so glad
You can drink decaffeinated.
I don't have a
Oh my
prostate
God, I hate
because I drink
decaffeinated.
tea
It's
all the
horrible.
time. Oh,
Just gives you a
decaffeinated is
headache.
disgusting. Decaffeinated tea, I've never had one that tasted right at all. It's horrible stuff. Even
Ugh.
that, in fact, I bought the expensive stuff thinking it's bound to be better, but no, not at all.
No.
It's
And
deep.
Oh,
do you know what I'm
I'll
going to do?
drink it at
I can
night,
make
you know.
coffee out of, dandelion root.
Yeah, and it won't have caffeine in it. So
But
now
the
look,
problem
the
is-
only thing I'll tell you was my brother, who's just passed away, drank too much coffee. I tell you,
Oh,
Mm.
he drank too much coffee. I
yeah.
can't say, but I was a bit worried about it. And
and-
you know,
Wow.
Actually, Anne, do you know what? On a serious note, which is about serious as your brother, when I actually, well, obviously, as you know, Anne, you know the history. When my OCD was so bad, I went to see a psychiatrist, right? And I was seeing him for 6 weeks, well, I saw him for months, right? But for over 6 weeks, I saw him. And he convinced me that I needed to stop drinking coffee, right? And then when my wife back then, she said, what have you been talking about with the psychiatrist for the past 6 weeks? Getting over coffee. And she said, I've been taking you back and forth to just get your psychiatrist to, but stopping drinking coffee was really important.
yeah,
Now
I
drinking
agree.
tea's important.
Yeah, I
Pardon?
know.
Now drinking tea is important. You stop it.
Oh,
Yes, I
right,
stop it.
yeah.
Yes,
It's-
I know.
Yeah, it's
I
all
know.
caffeine, isn't it? And
I had to
it's
stop
harder.
sugar once. I had to stop sugar once, and it's like coming off heroin. No, it was. I was in bed a week sweating and
Oh my God.
everything.
I know I get a terrible
Do you
headache if
know-
I drink
you know what?
decaffeinated tea.
I bought this
Yeah.
tea, which is organic white tea, which is absolutely horrible.
Oh,
I bought this moringa, which is even bloody worse. right.
oh.
So I'm gonna have to find something to drink because because if I that's the other thing. I'm not really gonna be drinking much either, because that's gonna be even big. That's gonna be as
Yeah.
bad.
What about rhubarb? Oh,
Rhubarb.
no.
You know that woman you got me seeing in bloody Llantwit Major, the one with the baby from South Africa, Anne. She got me onto drinking rhubarb, but unfortunately, I found it disgusting.
Yeah, it's pretty disgusting. Look, drink what you like, but you
I
know,
drink squash.
in
I do.
moderation. Well, no, I
go-
mean, Carl, you always drank too much tea. I drink too much tea. I put a pot on and I drink the lot, you know. I just terrible. So
Not
I
good.
can't talk, but I try and drink decaffeinated at night before I go
I
to
only
bed.
have 2 a day.
Hmm?
I only have 2 cups a day.
Lot of
Oh
tea.
God.
What you drink in between? Water,
Squash.
Mm.
squash. Oh,
That's all I know. I've got bad bowels, so I drink squash.
right.
If I have too much coffee, I'm in agony.
Yeah, that's
So
not good.
So
And that's true. I would have thought any kind of anxiety, caffeine,
Yeah.
it doesn't help
I
because it
got
will
bad
give you.
bowels too.
oh,
Oh my
don't.
bloody God.
Try
Right,
lactose free, Anne. It worked with me.
There you are.
Try
Right,
lactose
okay.
free. That's what I did.
On that note, right? I'm gonna have to dash because I do have quite a lot to do. So
Yeah, okay
right.
then. Bye-bye.
So Anne, I will see you tonight. No doubt I'll see
Okay.
Kate tonight online. And if there's nothing else anyone else needs to say urgently, I'm going.
Okay.
Right.
Cheerio, Daddy-o.
Bye then.
Take care, darlings. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. 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 Editing the next illicit pillar. I'm gonna have to call it a day. This was just too long today. It really was. I should have finished 20 minutes ago. So anyway, there's nothing in the chat box 1, nothing in the chat box 2, nothing in the chat box 3. There's my OCD thing done. Don't forget to like and subscribe.